Okay.
I really ought to get this stuff like this set up myself. Just things like being able to make a little 30-second video of drawing something, or like the other day there was some European website asked me to answer a bunch of questions and send them some artwork, and I was like, oh, cool, I'll plug stuff. And then they said, oh, can you also send just a little clip of you saying, hello, my name is Mark Stafford. Please go to Mayday Comics something to read my interview. Thank you, dear readers, or something like that. That took me about 5 months. Of just like putting it off, or suddenly remembering I had to do it, and then asking different people to do it, and then going out into the street, and then the cars driving by, and then it just took me so long to do something so simple. Fucking ridiculous.
So you were like clean shaven when you started on this thing.
Yeah.
So how are you anyway? How are you?
Okay. I spent most of yesterday being somewhat hungover and putting together files for Salmonella Smorgasbord, the collection of all the old bits. So I was going through old, like everything I've done as a theatre poster or that kind of stuff. And in the same chapter, I'm trying to get like beer labels I have done and record sleeves. And actual record sleeves I've done is about 2, but fake record sleeves I've done is about 5. I was just wondering whether to just not tell people that some of these albums are entirely made up. You're not going to be able to get an album by the Vatican rapists.
It's for them to discover, Mark, I think. So is this the thing you're doing for John, for Soaring Penguin?
Yeah, that's Soaring Penguin. This is going to be, it's going to be 248 pages of basically all my old bits. I think it's going to have like 5 or 6 pages from Botulism Banquet, the old small press book I put out in and then it's all my other small press stuff and Can Blues and all the little short strips I've done for loads of other stuff. Not all of them, actually. It's been quite curated. And frankly, loads of it's been lost.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the original artwork is still around, but the digital stuff, I had a hard drive crash and an external hard drive crash and a slow realisation of, oh dear, that's where all the, tons of work is gone, but thankfully the original artwork's around. And thankfully, whilst working at the Cartoon Museum, I tended to get, while Anita was out of the office, I tended to make copies of things just to see how they would turn out when they were in print, and quite a few of those have saved my arse on this book, so I could at least kind of copy the original art, get the original ink, and get the colour version, to kind of slide underneath and go, that doesn't look too bad, that kind of deal, rather than starting from scratch. But
yeah, well, I think that's a lesson for anybody really, which is you can never have enough copies of your stuff.
Back up and back up and back up again.
I don't take this advice, by the way.
I know. I'm just saying, I'm saying this advice and I'm not taking it.
No,
I still don't. I've got like 3 little external hard drives and I'm not quite sure what is on each of them, and I'm pretty sure that if this PC were to go down, there would be stuff that I don't have anywhere else, and whatever. It's just one of those.
Well,
also, there's this thing of just going through all of your old artwork is inherently somewhat depressing. There's so much stuff you kind of remember where your headspace was when you were doing all this and how much hope you had for, this will be the thing that goes out into the world.
Sorry, what was that word? Hope? Oh, okay, yeah. But it is always the case that, I mean, now, I think I've said this to you many times, I'm actually more optimistic looking at older stuff because you can see improvements, and I think that's always quite a good thing. Whereas you have other people that say, "Oh, I can never look at my old stuff because it's just, Yeah, as soon as I made something, I never look at it again. I'm just always constantly in a state of moving forward. And why I understand that, I just think, why do you do it if you hate your work so much? Yeah, I think it's always good to be reminded of where you're at. But like you say, perhaps not the kind of psychological states. Sometimes you don't really want to be reminded of those.
The physical thing, because you go through. I was looking through these old things, but scenes from books I have not read, which came out as a really nicely screen printed book in the early 2000s. A little book, I would say book. There was like 12 cartoons and a nicely screen printed cover, and the interior's got I think printed in Belgium, Sweden, something like that. This was under the purview of some other guy, Mark Parsons, who I worked with on a couple of things. And I've since completely failed to contact. I've no idea how to get hold of him to say your stuff's going to be in anyway. But also all that stuff I did with like a dip pen on Bristol board without really knowing what I'm doing, and I'm just staring. It's all hand lettered.
Oh, you crazy man!
And a lot of the hand lettering, I'm just going, bloody hell, mate! And I'm having to go through and kind of like just for the sake of legibility and whatever. And this feeling of like sort of looking at my old stuff and instantly seeing where you wouldn't do stuff like that these days. I feel like going, no. Make that figure smaller, move him slightly to the left. This kind of basic kind of knowledge you accrue after drawing a whole bunch of comics. My comics are drawn too close. I think it's because I'm really like drawing big faces.
Right.
But if you're drawing something like, I don't know, a fantasy strip or something strip, that thing of setting up a panel at the beginning just to show where everybody is, that's a lesson I didn't bloody learn until way too late in my career. And taking care about settings and things like that.
Yeah, but that's all part of it. I mean, everybody knows at least one cartoonist, comic maker that just appeared fully formed, and well, probably never moved on from the stylistically from where they started. And you just think, I mean, you could actually talk in depth about how someone starts fully formed. They were obviously sort of drew lots while they were a kid and were encouraged. And I mean, we've talked about it many times, but going through the Sean Phillips book and looking at the stuff that he was making when he was like, I don't know, 12 or something like that, and it's just like, that's crazy that it was just better than a lot of stuff people make throughout their career, and it's like 12 or. But when you read through it, it's because he was encouraged to draw all the time. So he's already had, I don't know, 12 years training. There you go.
Yeah. I mean, you are ahead of the game if you just grow up in a house full of books and vaguely encouraging adults.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Dave Hine, who I often work with, obviously, his parents just did not understand like art at all, or understand why anybody would want to make it or do it or whatever. So all of his artistic career has been in spite of where he came from. Whereas I don't know, probably the Etherington brothers or whatever, Zoo Rockman, whatever. Damn, their parents are right behind them every step.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And apart from the thing of just having the resources and time and space and solitude to get on with stuff, I think those people just not enough to just lie on the floor doodling away, whatever. That's I don't know, if there's 6 of you in this full house or whatever, you're not going to have that time or space.
So, I mean, I don't do any. When I've been chatting to people on these things, I've not done the kind of like, where did you start and all that sort of thing. But was yours a kind of childhood of books and encouragement, or was it something that you basically was just learned through your own interests as you went along?
I think it was kind of midway. I mean, definitely my mum, later on, she did painting classes. It was encouraged. She liked the fact that I did it. I don't think she understood definitely didn't understand comics. I was really quite chuffed later on in my life when I like you give your family members copies of things you've done, and you were like, I sat down and I read it, like this. Like this is a major thing, and kind of was there because you probably didn't understand what was going on because you didn't used to read comics. And I, looking back, up until about the age when me and my two sisters had a ridiculously idyllic childhood, where like our dad was just a jobber up until our mum was just took care of us. But the house we were in was a house that had been built by our granddad, and a huge garden, and it was right next to a big street running through it with like frogs. We had like 5 fruit trees. We had a gypsy caravan in our back. It makes us sound like an Enid Blyton story.
Right.
But we weren't walking around with like, there were, I don't know, grass, snakes and slow worms and little creatures and 2 kind of bunny rabbit and, and mum just kind of going, get out and play, all the time. So, all of that is kind of like, I don't have any angst. I don't have any angst. I don't, you can't make a Crumb-style documentary about our family. It all turned out all right, I think. Not for me, financially at least. So, everybody's got to do that.
That's interesting, yeah. I mean, it's, yeah. But I think giving that kind of encouragement in other ways means that it opens you up to sort of like self-discovery in that way, doesn't it? That you in that way you find your interests, because as far as I understand, you're not born with interests. It's not imprinted in your DNA.
But it's weird. Definitely. I remember drawing as a kid and being a kid of the kind of late 70s or whatever, kind of heavy metal magazine and all that kind of Conan, but paperbacks or whatever lying around. What you wanted to draw was kind of girls in metal bikinis and big black axes and whatever. And I could tell my mum was like, "Oh Jesus Christ, what's this?"
This was last week, wasn't it, Mark?
Yeah. Gently encouraging me away from that. And I think you would have been happier if I was drawing like Giles cartoons. And she definitely kind of pimped me in that direction. Just going, it would be great if you did a cartoon of all of us like moving house and this and that, whatever. No. I was going to draw, busty vampires. And whatever. I now look back on it and I'm like seized with horrendous embarrassment about all of this stuff. About the fact that, after I saw Star Wars, there's about 10 years where I don't think I went to the cinema and saw a movie that didn't have a magic sword or a mole-on fucking spaceship in it. I think the first film I actually saw that was actually made for adults about an adult thing was Witness. Peter is Witness, and that was okay because it had Han Solo in it. Pitiful. And then, of course, about 5 years later, after that, I turned into a complete comic snob and just went, barbarians.
Yeah.
I wouldn't read anything with an elf.
No. Well, that may be to a thing that should be recommended. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't think I've got anything with elves in now. I might have had before though. I've got nothing against elves. If any elves are listening, I've got nothing personal against you, and long may it continue. Maybe there will be a resurgence of sort of 80s interest in kind of like I'm going to try anthropomorphic creatures. God, that was difficult. I'm not going to edit that out. I don't edit out stuff that makes me seem idiotic. It's good.
I do feel a bit weirdly out of like when there's like lots of comics artists kind of chat on Facebook or whatever. They're genuine, no hold barred, 100% enthusiasm for Star Wars and Dungeons and Dragons and Lord of the Rings and Marvel and DC, where they just love all that stuff and all that stuff was their childhood. and what they want to do most as an adult creator is basically combine and recombine all those elements of that stuff they did. And I feel slightly alienated by all that because I grew up with Star Wars, especially. I kind of grew up with it and liked it, but just this obsessive love-hate thing that's going on at the moment with these huge fandoms that are just fucking war with each other about all these details of continuity and that The Last Jedi was the worst film ever made or the best film ever made or whatever.
It's fucking bizarre. It really is, because we're the same age, if I can remember. Obviously, I'm a bit older than you, probably a lot older. I can never remember how old we are. Don't tell them, Mark. You just never reveal. Of course, I grew up with all the things that kind of younger generations of fanboys are now taking to the streets and fighting over. And I'm just thinking, I've never really understood why I didn't end up with a kind of fanboy mentality. I think I have no reason why, and why I don't care either way. I just find it absolutely bizarre that you come across people again and again and again that want to keep recreating that very moment that culture hit them. It doesn't matter what film it is, but it's like some, I don't know, perhaps at the peak of puberty or something. It just associates.
I think it's that wallow thing. You know, I don't know, this picture I have in my head is some kid kind of lying on a carpet completely surrounded by comic books and maybe some crayons and some Star Wars toys, and on the TV in the background burbling away is some cartoon. And that was this moment in some, I don't know, 10-year-old kid's life when they were just indubitably just in this like sort of utter haze of kind of kid heaven kind of deal. And they're continually trying to go back to that kind of weird sweet spot.
Yeah.
Where all of my favourite media are one and dones, you know? I like the Kubrick movies, or you know, like Wes Anderson these days, or something like that. He's like, make one film, and it's about this, and then it goes on and makes it, and there's no sequels, no continuity, no continuing characters. All of my favourite novelists work like that. That's how I like me, and I really like that. The cartoonist, was it Jason? All of his little books are separate things. Julia Graffer, I don't know pronounce her name, Graffer, or Dan Clowes. They all do separate.
Yeah.
They get each of their books is this kind of wonderful separate thing, beginning, middle, end, and then they go on to something else. That's how I like. And the same with musicians. So you know, like here's the Tom Waits album, and the next Tom Waits album is a significantly different thing. It's still Tom Waits, but it's, you know, that's how I like other media to be, and that's kind of how I want my stuff. But you know, especially with like the Dave Hine books. Each one comes out and it's a different thing.
What are you up to with them now? Is it you've done 2 or is it 3?
3.
Okay.
The first, well, we did the adaptation of The Colour Out of Space for Self-Made, and then we did The Man Who Laughs, the Hugo adaptation, and then we did Lip Hook. But in between, or contemporaneously with Lip Hook, we were kind of pitching and putting together the first few chapters of The Bad Bad Place, which came out in chapters through Soaring Penguin. So that came out, oh God knows, end of 2017? I'm not quite sure now. The last chapter has just appeared in the issue of Meanwhile.
Oh God!
It came out quite soon ago. But me and Dave, actually this Wednesday, are meeting up to talk about the new book, which we've been, you know,
nice.
It's in that stage, or it has been in that stage for ages. I've been sending him sketchbook pages and little bits and pieces and notes, and you know, I think a lot of it is kind of, you know, bits of dialogue or whatever that they could happily ignore. I was just like the moods I'm kind of going for. But I remember when we were at the lakes, we had one day after the end of the Lakes Festival on the where we'd been on the Soaring Penguin table plugging Bad Bad Place, and I had the beginning idea for the next book then. So we went up and we walked around the castle and went to the cafe, and I went, "Dave, I've got this idea," and that was like my first mention of this thing. So it's taken bloody ages for this one to get together, but it took bloody ages for Lip Hook, after we first mentioned it, for Emma to say yes to it. And hopefully she'll just say yes to this thing. Though, Selfmade are only putting out so many books. And Brian Talbot's taken up one of those slots now.
See, and what a very good link, because you have actually worked with Brian, haven't you?
I have worked with Brian Talbot. Yeah, we did Cherubs together.
So you can punch him in the face when he takes your slot. Then is this how it works?
Which, Cherubs was this thing that he'd come up with. He'd come up with the concept through an internet animation company.
Okay.
And the internet animation company went bust, obviously, because it's an internet animation company.
Yeah, of course. What a stupid idea.
And then he kind of pitched the basic idea for it around, and Joe threw it, went, "Hey, we'll do that," when he had a comics company called Desperado Books, and they ended up producing what it was going to be 4 comic books, and then be collected, and then it came out as a limited tome through Desperado. And that came out and disappeared without trace and made no money. So me and Brian looked at each other and thought, let's carry on with this. And then I spent another year or so drawing another 100 or something pages. So it eventually came out as a 200 plus page graphic novel through Dull. None of this has earned me any money. I'm quite happy with the book, but none of this has got me any cash. I think I've got some money for the Dark Horse cover out of Mike Richardson has given me cash. So,
fantastic. So there's a tale for every aspiring creator, which is that.
What was brilliant about that was, as somebody who hadn't done much in the way of continuity before, I'd done like a bunch of short strips, 6-page to. Well, I think the longest thing I've done was probably about 14 pages. I was suddenly drawing 200 pages, and Brian kind of gave me the layouts for the, large chunks of it. And through that became like a storytelling kind of boot camp of things that Brian has learned over the, like, where's your eye level? Who's speaking first? Where are the speech blues going to be? All this kind of stuff. Kind of pacing over a long time. That's that thing that never occurs to you when you're drawing short strips.
Yeah.
If you're telling a long story, it's okay for there to be dull pages in it. In fact, there need to be in order for the exciting stuff to be exciting. There has to be pages of kind of just characters in a cafe talking and stuff. And how do you frame that to make it fun, but not overwhelming and stuff like that?
It's like having
it's good, but I wish it had got me money. And occasionally he'll say, "Oh, some animation companies expressed an interest for some TV thing or whatever," and it's like, "Okay, yeah, cheers, Brian." Just go. I've no idea. I've no idea if it'll ever get me.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. You should say that was kind of like your, like you say, your boot camp, your learning experience, because, I mean, people may realise with all these, most of these interviews, I've known a lot of the people that I've got in this exhibition and who I'm talking to. I've known them for quite a few years, and I've known you for quite a few. And I was thinking about this today or yesterday, I can't remember. A full disclosure, I've got a hangover, so I'm not my usual dynamic self, although you probably won't notice. But my first memory of knowing you was yet again thanks to Paul Crevette with one of his pub meetings, and there was an exhibition at the Magma shop in Clerkenwell. I'm being very sketchy, and we went for drunks. We went for drunks afterwards, and it was a group of people as you know, all those things used to be back in the midst of time. I can't even remember when it was, and you were there, and I think I may have been aware of you before, but that was definitely probably the first time I'd done some social. You'd still got your dreads.
Right, dreads down to my arse.
Yeah.
I'm culturally embarrassed about that these days.
I just thought I'd bring it up, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. Now that you bring it up, I suddenly remember, oh God, the Magma Shop. Oh my God, there was a little show.
Yeah.
There was definitely, around that time, there was a bunch of, not around that time, over ages, there was a bunch of different shows that it seemed like every cartoonist in London went, okay, got the phone call. There was one called Keen City.
Right.
At Skinny Links Comics, and there was like a load of artists were involved in that, and I remember like being really happy that I'd done a piece for that.
Right.
There was 2 crisp exhibitions, one of which I did artwork for, and they kind of took over just empty shop space in round the back of kind of Oxford Street. That
yeah.
Fitzrovia
Yeah.
area. Yeah. It used to be a thing that happened, and this kind of built up to probably that Comica that took over the ICA, where they actually had a decent sized exhibition.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. There was these opportunities to slap your stuff on the wall. I mean, I've got some stuff on the wall in town at the moment, but it isn't a comic show. It isn't all the cartoonists together.
Yeah.
And I remember the crisp ones being really good for. It's like being downstairs in a big room, utterly plastered on Cobra beer because they sponsored everything at that particular time.
Yeah.
And talking to Phil Malloy, who did those amazing cowboy animations,
right.
and Hunt Emerson, and everything I said to them being like the kind of asshole thing that you wake up the next day and go,
yeah.
Christ! Or whatever. I kind of mainly remember you from things like Caption and stuff like that. There's all this weird thing with small press because like, certain people are just around, and then you get used to that kind of eyebrow raising.
Yeah, that's
it. They recognise you as a fellow traveller or whatever, and until you're on like a pub table together or somebody makes an introduction, you don't really.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, isn't it? I mean, there's so many people I met exactly doing that sort of thing that for years and years you'd be going to the same events and be like, yeah, we've never spoken, have we? And then circumstance and beer forces you together, and then you think, you're quite cool. I don't mind hanging out with you. Or it's like, I'm never going to speak to that person again. Yeah, but as for now, dates and stuff, I can't fucking remember mostly when, actual years, I can't remember when I met people. It's either early stage, mid stage, or now. That's.
I mean, as part of this Salmonella Smorgasbord book, I was like, I'll just slap in like these theatre things on a page, and I was thinking, well, it should be nice, like, or the things from books I haven't read. I thought it should be nice to just write in the date of when this thing came out, and I was just like, I have
no idea.
I don't even know if it was 1990s or 2000s. I don't even know which decade it was in. I was just kind of staring at the pages going, crap.
The reason why I took us back to this point, and obviously alcohol and age meant that.
Fantastic. Yeah.
But the reason why I was dragging you back into the midst of time was I thought it was quite an important point that you made, which is that because when I knew you, and right up to the point I think of Cherubs, I really knew you for singular works, really, and illustrations and that. And as I've said to people many times, it's not easy to learn how to make comics. I mean, it's or to get to that point where you actually make your first, I would say, finished work. You have lots of starts, and but that thing of getting from a couple of pages to say, I don't know, 22 pages, it's like fucking piece. It just
it's the Everest.
It really is. I mean, I try not to talk too much about myself on these, but I end up talking about myself. But I found that period of time of just getting the very first kind of photocopied pamphlet out was a long period of time. It really did. So many false starts and that.
Yeah. I mean, problem was that though I was kind of part of the small press scene, I was kind of felt I was slightly on the outside because I was too much of a lazy bastard or didn't have enough money or whatever. I was mostly on the dole. I never really put out much kind of output by myself, you know. Maybe a few kind of photocopy things. I was a guy who was carrying around like a my national record of achievement plastic folder, which I repurposed as an A4 portfolio. And inside that, there was loads of black and white photocopies of these. You know, I would make 6, maybe 5, like really good pages per year that were massively overworked. What I wasn't putting out was what you were doing, or what everybody else in the small press should have been doing, was these continuities. You know, a little 16-page comic, a little 8-page comic. What I was doing was little, like 6 pages in other people's anthologies that they were putting the money together for and whatever. And the few bits of small press that came out that were just entirely my stuff, that was mainly because somebody else kind of stepped in and went, Mark, you're putting out a thing.
Yeah.
And I'm taking control, you know. So Jan Kalinski was and Ed Lindenbell were these 2 guys, and he said, Mark, we're putting out a book with your stuff in. And like I said before, this guy Mark Parsons, who had his own weird little print setup with a risograph machine and some other stuff. He kind of put out the Colleen comic and the scenes from books I have not read. And if it hadn't been for those guys, I need some. It's that confidence thing, isn't it? Is that you kind
Well, of course.
need somebody to need something before because otherwise I'll just be riddled with self-doubt, like sort of as to whether anybody needs this crap halfway through. And it's a lot, you know. It's it's kind of why I like collaborating. Somebody out there wants something, and without that, I don't think I'm self-motivated enough to like sort of draw. I would be self-motivated enough to do like a few paintings or little one-pagers or short strips or other stuff like that. I wouldn't be self-motivated enough to do a 200-page graphic novel because that's a lot of work.
It is a lot, yeah. But I think one of the things you just said is really interesting as well. It's about confidence, and you can lose confidence halfway drawing a panel because she just suddenly comes on you. You can say, "What the fuck is as you've just said, what the fuck am I doing this for? No one's going to be interested in this." And I think confidence to me is more learning the ability to shut that voice down. Rather than saying I am supreme art being. It's
that's a kind of confidence spiral and an unconfidence like death spiral.
Yeah.
Where you can get up in the morning and feel quite chipper about yourself, and then you'll start drawing a panel, and after about 4 goes, you can't draw a hand. You're like, oh, damn it! And then even this voice there is just like kind of going, you faker.
Yeah.
You're full of crap. You can't work. You've never been able to. You can't do this. You can't do this. What the hell is wrong with you? And as soon as that confidence is shaken, your ability to come back in and just kind of go, I can draw a hand or whatever, it's just completely destroyed. And you kind of need to step away in those moments. You better hope you have something, money's not resting on this. And
or deadline.
Do something else and then come back to it later.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it's. I mean, now is a good example. I'm just looking at you. I've got your ArtStation page open because I'm looking at. Because I just want to. Because obviously, just to remind myself of your stuff, and clearly you have some ability. So, whenever those moments hit, that my hand looks like I'm drawing a chicken's foot or something. Although that sounds quite cool, you can immediately just look at past glories and go, "You can do this shit,"
I am capable. I know I am capable of stuff. But there are days, especially if you're hungover.
Oh yeah, it's a wash.
Just your abilities to, just like you may as well give up and try and do something else where you just suddenly. Because on your best days, it's all flowing.
Yeah.
It's just come from nowhere and it's all kind of effortless or whatever. And it's all coming from the same place. So it's just a mental thing.
Yeah.
It's just some chemical
Yeah,
thing that's
yeah, because you burnt most of your brain cells the night before, and your cognitive process is just not.
Some of those connections, and
Yeah,
your neurons are just
yeah,
going piss off.
yeah. Hopefully they'll return, but you never guarantee it.
Yeah.
But it's a common theme that you talk to people that do creative stuff. It doesn't matter whether it's what we do or whether it's, I don't know, music, whatever it is. It is a common theme of kind of both having that voice and then overcoming it. I think one of the interesting things about making, I don't really like, I keep saying this, I don't really like calling them autobiographical comics, but writing stuff is to, after a while, to not turn those into like a therapy session where you're actually exploring these ideas. You know, it's like, oh, I really doubt myself, and it's like, well, don't fucking write that. You know, go and talk to a mate.
But that appears to be like a large part of a lot of art these days. You know, the pop music especially, not like down with the kids and listening to tons of it.
You do fool me, Mark.
Yeah. But if you listen to that pop music of the 70s, it might be about, it's mostly about love stories, stuff that's happening, or politics, or this, that, whatever. Huge amounts of pop music these days seems to be about
internal
the reaction to the last single.
Yeah.
You know, like, so all you haters are talking about my last or whatever. Or, you know, the how they're feeling about being a pop star.
Yeah, it's like
incredibly meta.
Yeah.
And there are large amounts of also biocomics which are about drawing and whatever, and it's that terrible because drawing's kind of boring. I mean, it's kind of an amazing process. I always said this. People who think, oh, artists must be extraordinary, and the thoughts going through artists' heads when they're drawing it, like Van Gogh must have been thinking these incredible celestial things, and I was going, I bet you'd be really disappointed. I bet you go into their head, and all you'd hear would be, yeah, nah, yeah, that's going all right, more blue, or whatever.
Yeah. Oh God, my dose is really playing up today.
It's kind of prosaic stuff. It's just.
It's not very exciting, is it? It's like I always have this thing where people. I mean, I don't have a very kind of like flashy style, but that doesn't matter. People see that you draw something, and it's like you're some sort of like sort of a village elder of displaying magical skills or something, and it's not really. It's just like making a mark on paper. It's a motor skill. It's just a repetitive motor skill. There's no fucking magic to it.
Yeah.
Oh God, that sounded depressing, didn't it? Sorry, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing, and the magic is.
There's kind of a magic to it when it's all cooking, and you're going,
of course
I like
there is.
this, but hey, that's going well, or whatever. But in your life, all the stuff you want to write about shouldn't be the writing or drawing bit, because that's kind of prosaic. That's the bit where you're sat down and you know. There's this novelist. I don't know if you can call him a novelist. Dave Holmes talking about him the other day. He likes his books. Swedish or German or something. Basically, he's obsessively turning all of his life into his novels.
Yeah, I was reading that.
Yeah, there's about 3 or 4 in this category. And I would have thought, after a while, you're just thinking, well, who's going to become your friend? That'd be like, oh, by the way, this is going. I was thinking the other day, can completely screw up this guy's, like, you know, because he's trying to write this serious stuff about the meat and grind of a normal person's existence. Yeah. If you made friends with him and suddenly turn up in his doorstep and go, I found a suitcase full of mafia money. I found a long lost uncle of yours who's died, and you can inherit his house, but you've got to spend one night in a haunted house. Invade his life and then hit him up with like the most hackneyed novel concepts, whatever. Just like, you know, completely destroy his credibility.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like a very very kind of. I haven't read it. I just saw Dave posting about it, but that sounds like a very could be very kind of like interesting, but also sounds like a very narrow kind of field too. But who knows? I mean. I'm just riffing on.
it sounds extraordinary because Dave described it as extraordinary.
Fair
but
enough.
you do look at somebody like Joe Matt in Autobiocomics
Yeah.
and just go, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
too much sharing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was saying this to Sally Ann. I think it was Sally Ann because we were talking briefly about Autobiocomics, and the fact is that without repeating it again, people say to me, "Oh, it's very brave." Not me personally, but when people say, "Oh, it's very brave to be so open in your comics and stuff like that," and I've said this to you hundreds of times. I said to anybody that listens to me, what I write about is so removed from when it actually happened. I mean, I have no desire to write about what's really going on inside my head.
No.
I don't want to share that with anybody.
I mean, we've talked about Eddie Campbell before, but
yeah.
He's kind of the high watermark of this stuff, at least for me. I think it's astonishing. But you read that big book, Alec, I've heard, and there's huge chunks of his life story are missing from that. You kind of go like, if this is an autobiography, you kind of want to know what happened to your marriage, pal. Because it's just suddenly over, or stuff like that. And part of me is like going, well, it's none of my business. Or anything, but he's just kind of telling the stories he wants to tell, all the stories that fit neatly into a story. I mean, like, the few times I've done kind of autobio, which isn't very often, it's the times when I've suddenly thought, oh my God, I've had a thing happen to me, and it fits neatly into 9 panels. It's like beginning, middle, end, funny thing happened on a bus kind of deal. Like the format took over from any kind of real life thing. I could see it done on the page. There's a few big stories where occasionally I think I really ought to do a story about that, because I lived with a friend of mine who was schizophrenic and basically ran away, and his life was and he ended up committing suicide or something. And I think I've got a few, I love that guy, and I've kind of got a few good observations I think I can make in that comic, but just the idea of starting that and having to be respectful to everybody and kind of run it past the family and whatever.
Yeah.
Just incredibly daunting, and I wouldn't want it to be fatuous. I wouldn't want it to be kind of asinine. I wouldn't want it to be just somebody pointing out kind of Hallmark cards. Oh well, they're like really bland kind of observations. I'd kind of want it to be talk about the actual difficulties, or otherwise, what's the point of doing it?
Yeah, exactly. It's a very interesting. After a few years, when you do it, once you've got over. I mean, some people go straight away for the sensational thing. And I think we talked about on a Friday night where the biggest moment in their lives is dealt with in the first 6 pages, and it's like, okay, you should have played that one out a bit.
Well, I mean, the problem we thought about was that, people whose first instinct nowadays is not to create characters and tell stories or whatever. It's autobiographical, and it's kind of narcissistic and solipsist. That it's this kind of, because that has been the nature of a lot of graphic novel successes in the last years. All your Persepolis and whatever. And all the stuff that followed both up. That's everybody's first instincts. And loads of people are going, I will do my big graphic novel. And they do have an event in their life or an illness or something like that.
Hopefully both. That's really good stuff then.
But this is the first comic they're doing.
Yeah.
So the first 50 pages of it is going to be garbage. So you're taking the big moment of your life. This is the biggest story, the death of their father or some some difficult, breast cancer or some, it's a horrendous thing that they, and they're observations thereof, and they're turning that into their first.
Yeah, basically turn it into dog shit.
And you're like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Stop for the 5-page story about something amusing that happened to you on the bus, please, for God's sake.
Yeah, just
just learn how to do it, because otherwise, it's going to be terrible. If you don't know how to put speech balloons onto a page so people can read them in order.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of the success, and also one of the things that has become a bind with comics, which is, and there'll be another form that people will say that you have to do it eventually, but at the moment it's like the only ambition is to make the big book. That's it. If you haven't made the big book, you're a failure.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just bullshit. It really is. Everybody knows it once they actually start on the stuff. The successes all have their own. There's so many different successes. It's like whether someone's just achieved doing a folded A4 piece of paper upwards.
Yeah.
It's all relative to the person, and but it's this notion that it can only be ratified by being a certain size. I mean, it's a lame conversation. I don't really want to get into it, but what both of us have done is that we have made books. I'll just call them books. They're comics, but they've got a cover and a spine on them. And I think it's and have worked with publishers. And I think it's an interesting process because I would like to work with more publishers, more professional people, because the moments that it actually happens, that someone holds your hand or something, but in a really professional way, and it's not very often, it's just so nice.
Somebody on the other side of the desk who gives a crap about what you've done and has actually read it and has paid some attention.
It's just like,
it's so rare I get the feeling it's incredibly rare in publishing. It's one of those weird things that, like most industries in the arts, have been kind of hollowed out, so all the money's gone to the top, and all the money for lower down, and all these people that used to work in publishing, doing proofreading and signing, whatever, they're all now kind of unpaid interns and stuff like that. And I mean, I did see this thing at the Lakes last year where they were talking about Jonathan Cape, like one of the Cape novels. I think it was Flake. And they were going, here's the designer, and here's the proofreader, and here's the kind of management team, or whatever. And I was aghast.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
They actually have people.
They have people.
Like marketing. They have to actually think about it. And I remember Brian Talbot saying that after 20, 30 years of working in comics, like DC, Marvel, Dark Horse, these people, it's Jonathan Cape. Like, after he'd finished a book, like, he would turn up for book signings and the books would actually be there. And they would turn up on time, and somebody would have organised for him to do an interview on Radio 4 and like actual stuff that people in the real world would have seen. And it's just, because it's kind of lovely being in small press. I guess it's lovely being in this punk band. It's lovely being in small press.
Yeah.
But there's a point where you're going, it really would have been nice if you'd printed up flyers for the gig. I remember being part of autonomous art shows, and everybody would kind of turn up at with their art from the last minute, and nobody had thought we had any like lamps need to be in the building so you can actually see sodding paintings on the wall.
That's.
And somebody at the last minute is going, shouldn't somebody be on tour, or this whole kind of thing.
Well, talking about light.
It's really fun when you're 20.
Yeah.
But after a while, you're going, actually, I spent quite a bit of time on this, and I really like it.
We see this is the point why I'm not self-aggrandizing what I do, but this is why I still continue to at least try and organise things for groups of people. I don't have any liquidity to do anything decent. Everything's like is amateurish, for want of a better word. I mean, at the moment, thank you for giving me work for this exhibition. I mean, it is in a corridor outside my studio. I mean, it's it's bigger than some galleries I've put stuff in, but it's effectively a corridor. And I have very limited resources and I'm not a great marketer of anything, so everything's very ad hoc. And I do apologise in advance to everybody that was foolish enough to be involved. But um, the idea would be that you would always have somebody there that could step in and finance and support your crazy ideas that you've written on the back of a fag packet. But it isn't, and I agree exactly what you're saying. It's nice to be involved in a kind of DIY scene and all the people and everything that come from it that's involved with it. But just occasionally, a bit of light relief, and but there we go. Maybe
somebody with competence.
Yeah. Maybe it's my fault for being not good enough. There we are. I'll get that one out there now. I'll leave that one there. Jeez, Mark, we've been going for hold on. You're a very good interview because I've had to say nothing. All right, I'm gonna. Fucking hell, it's 50 minutes. I'll probably keep it going for another 10 minutes because otherwise it's going to take me like a year to edit this fucking thing, probably. But so I'm just going to very briefly, because there's loads I could talk to you about, but I think you've covered quite a lot without having to really dig deep. But like I just said, I really want to thank you for taking part in this, because like I said to other people, it's presenting the comic form, for want of a better word, and just showing the variety. I mean, there's like, I don't know, 12 people. I lose count actually, which is really terrible. But there's enough people anyway. There's lots of people, and they all have a different visual representation of their ideas. There we are. I was going, instead of saying style, because I think style's such an overused word, really. And it just shows what a versatile medium the comic form is, I think.
Yeah.
And this is just flat pages. This isn't even taking them out of the frame and reconstructing them or whatever. And it's one of the things that does constantly cheer me up is the fact that people still trying to do different things within the comic medium.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, yours. I mean, I'm looking at your illustrations, but your drawing and colour work. That's the point. I think that people were looking at. I had somebody in yesterday looking at their own work, which is good, and they were looking around. Their partner was looking at yours and said how much liked it, full stop, but the lettering on it. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. That you would look at a page and say how much they liked. They liked it overall, but the lettering really stood out. So all that hand lettering paid off. But I just think that the ones that you sent me, because I can actually have a kind of time to look at people's work, how much you've really worked on just the colour over the years and that. It's fucking great. It's really, really.
It was all kind of hand painted up to a certain. It was only around the time I was doing Cherubs that Robert Wells, said, "Mark, do you want a scanner and a computer?" Because I'm getting shot of mine. He was upgrading, and I said, "Yes, Mr. Rob Wells, I would like that thing."
I bet you've still got that, haven't you?
I still have the speakers. And thankfully, kind of Cherubs was in a grayscale, so the files weren't especially huge.
Yeah.
At that period of me learning scanning and Photoshop and how to get decent colouring out of it, because you can tell people who just go straight with swatches and paint bucket and just fill in, and you get this horrible kind of garish colours. And it is that thing of learning to dial it down a notch and just kind of go, no. You want to knock this back and put a bit of texture in there and kind of screw it up a bit.
Yeah.
And there's always the delight when you discover, you fill in a piece of artwork with normal, like boring kind of grass is green and trees are blue and whatever, colours. and then you can go into hue and saturation and just muck around with the hues and make everything just slightly off or desaturate or whatever. That was a revelation to me. And when you're doing a painting and realise you can't do that anymore, it's painful. You know, I was doing this because I was doing this painting recently with these Louis Wayne cats, and it is this thing of like dropping a bit of like yellow acrylic into the varnish to give it a take effect. It's basically doing like a one-layer paint bucket tool and then taking that down to 50%. Essentially, I'm doing digital painting on a. But this is coming up with the years, it's become a bit more of a obsession, and I keep looking at those cool. That art of the 70s that was really kind of in your face, you know, punk rock colouring.
Yeah.
And the way Rich, all the coloured stuff, even though it's mainly doing like barbarian stuff, I just love the way it was like, it's really acid colour, you know.
There must be something in the air then, because with my screen printing at the moment, I've really got into buying fluorescent colours.
Yeah.
Because I've never been, the past few years I've used colour quite a lot, but I've never been a loud colour person. I thought, why not? What's your aversion to using lime and acid yellow and things? And just by random chance, because when you've got a screen, I overprint. I print on fucking anything till I can't be asked anymore, because you've made the screen, you might as well use it. So I always end up with a big pile of stuff. And I've got some black paper, so I've got fluorescent orange, because I was using that for the page, and I printed it on the black paper, and it's like, fuck, this has come out with this like really nice chestnut brown, and it was like, okay, so this is a road of discovery, because now I'm going to have to print all of the fluorescent colours on black to see what they come out as. So
yeah, that sounds fun.
So I haven't got round to it yet, but it's interesting as you've talking about discoveries of it, colour, because you had the experience of actually analog painting before doing your digital. It's all there, and it's only you are going through the process now of you know how to model things, obviously through light and tone, and now that shows. I keep looking over here, but it shows through the work. It's not like you say. It's not like you've got, I've got the line art, cool, get the bucket, I'm a colourist, and it's like, no, you're not. It's not even. You haven't even married up any sort of like
colours. One of the few bits of kind of foundation course that really stuck in my head was they did do a lot of colour studies course. And I forget most of it, but I do remember that thing of like you've got to think about complementary colours and do that colour wheel or whatever. And I'm assuming that's incredibly tedious class, but damn, is it useful? It kind of sticks in the back of your head with, you know, what works, what doesn't work, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know how much formal art training either of us, but I only did it up to. I did foundation studies, and then I did about 1 year of HND graphic design.
Oh wow!
So my academic career is pitiful.
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, the bits that you've done are obviously become very useful. I mean, it's like I was talking very early on about the fact it's self-discovery in that sense, about what interests you as entertainment, as inspiration. Obviously, a lot of cartoonists are self-taught. It's either through reading comics, the actual formal training, the art side. I mean, full disclosure, like an arsehole, I've got an MA. But it's not an MA in anything that it's sorry, I'll rephrase this. It's not an MA in kind of anything critical like design or illustration, or it's an MA in printmaking. So
that's a good thing.
It's become useful in many other ways, and but that hangover of, I hate saying it, so I'm going to do the air quotes, fine art. There's so much that you learn, and then you spend a lot of time trying not to be an artist, as in a fine artist, because you don't, to do the galleries and stuff.
It is amazing how many people paid good money. I mean, I think I was the last generation that got grants. I still had a full grant, which was enough to live on in East Ham in the early 90s or whatever.
Oh, geez, absolutely. Bloody hell.
Yeah, but loads of people who paid good money to do like a proper fine art course or whatever, and thought that they would be taught something.
Yes, I know.
That's the main thing. Is that most of them thought they'd be, and like maybe they still did life drawing or whatever, but all the stuff about actually teaching you how to mix paint and rabbit glue and make canvases and all this stuff, the all technical stuff, that just completely disappears from the curriculum in fine art.
Yeah. Well, the thing is,
you were supposed to have been taught that at A level, and you were supposed to be taught that in foundation studies. So they just don't do that anymore in fine art, and now it's all about conceptual stuff.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, one of the things I always trot out, which is that anybody knows that. It's different now, but at the time, if you actually wanted to learn anything, you go and make friends with a technician, and you take your technician out for a few beers, like every week. And they become your best friend, and you learn everything you need to know from them, and that's what happened. I mean, some of my best friends still from that period were or became printmaking technicians, and their knowledge is just incredible.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, printmaking knowledge.
Yeah, Dan Cloud said this in an interview, and I've heard most people say similar things. Is that they did like 2-3 years of a fine art MA or whatever, but the single or the 2 or 3 days that they completely remember is the one day that somebody came in who was, I don't know, like an artist who did the front covers of romance novels or something.
Yeah.
And he wasn't talking about theory, and he wasn't talking about concept. He was going like, so, right, well, I get the photo reference and I do this, and I cut these bits onto a slide, and then we photograph this, and then I mix a base colour, which is going to be this, this, and this, and then, like on gesso or whatever. I just basically gave them
just broke it down,
don't information, and everyone thinks this whole class of people go, huh?
Yeah. So that's how it happened.
Somebody taught us how to do stuff. I don't want to be one of those anti-conceptual stuff because I think it's just what I've heard from lots of people being incredibly disappointed by what they've emerged from school with.
Yeah.
Loads of people who emerged from schools trying to get into animation, and they've been basically told, follow your hearts, follow your dreams, and then they approach an animation company. I goes, we need you to draw a horse.
Yeah, exactly.
We need you to actually, animate something. We're basically putting together adverts here. We want you to do, characters, story, and this kind of stuff.
I would say that one of the things that it did instill in me, because obviously I spent a lot of years doing education, because it was one of those things that I felt that I had to do. Just to prove something. I can't remember what I was trying to prove now, but one of the things it did instill is, for those very reasons you just laid out, is a kind of self-motivation, and also just discovering stuff yourself, and you had some contextual studies, and just the libraries. I mean, at Camberwell, where I finished, they had a really good library, and I spent a lot of time in there just going through everything, because it's like, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
I might have been somewhat slagging off the idea of art college, and obviously I didn't properly follow the whole thing through, but obviously I've met lots of art students over time. It's still worth doing if the library's good, the connection, and your classmates are interesting and good people, because they will be your mates for the rest of your life, and one of them will go on to work for a magazine and might be able to get you in the or they will go on and do things and be interesting people, and you'll get you invited places, and you'll do the same for them and whatever. And to that extent, art college or anything where you just meet people, all of those Paul Gravett things where we just met other cartoonists.
Yeah.
The Comics Creators Guild for me. If in whatever little town the people like that are around, and they can meet up with fellow kind of cartoonists, act about stuff, and just kind of talk about, hey, let's put on a show or whatever. All of that stuff, all of those people who become your friends and become your social circle. It's not. I guess you can kind of do that online, but you don't do so. I think you've got to get out and meet people.
You've got to smell the skin. I don't know what I'm saying.
With us, it was all kind of pub involved, so I don't know how many.
I think
how much you are into actually this, because it's blood pricey for pints.
Exactly.
States.
Yeah.
At least it's in London. So I don't know where and how you live, but.
And I've also read a few times about. I'm not sure what age group, but they're not considered safe spaces as well, pubs, and that's a consideration that hadn't even entered my thinking. So.
Yeah, I guess not. I just got used to,
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. But I think you've really summed it up well about that's a really important point. It was dressed up as something that I found abhorrent, which is networking, because I never understood it. I always thought networking was something people did in the city, but that's what you're doing. You're building a network of people, and but in a different way. A gang. You've got your fucking gang, and you're going to go out and have a chain fight with somebody outside the Jon Snow after a few pints of Taddy Lager.
It's some weirdo magazine. I think in the Letters Column they had a running thing of like, I want to join an art gang. I like that art gang. I like the idea of like sort of a flick knife and pulling out a palette knife. This kind of deal.
Yeah, arguing over which kind of white that you actually have to mix in. Is it titanium? No, use the one with lead instead. It's a lot more toxic. Look, dude, I'm going to fucking have to finish this. So, let me just do one thing, which is just finish it up, and that's just say thanks, Mark. Thanks for this lovely chat, and I'm sure we'll do many more of them at some point. And also just thanks for taking part, because I always contact people with yet another. Oh, let's have a comic convention in some broken down old working men's.
Greasy hall.
Yeah, and people do answer the call.
That's the other thing apart from being an actor. Turn up.
Yes.
Even if your work isn't turn up for stuff.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It really is. Even if you don't feel like it, which. There has been so many social things where I've just been stood there going, oh, I just want to go home. I hate this. But you just got to do it. I've lost you, haven't I? He's gone.